Welcome to NAIFA Live for November 2020. I'm your host, Zach Hewells. We would like to thank NAIFA Missouri for being our host state this month. And now, to celebrate having a host state this month of NAIFA Missouri, we will have NAIFA Missouri President Jennifer Hodges to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Jennifer?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. And now I would like to turn things over to NAIFA trustee and Missouri native Mark Aker for some NAIFA announcements. Mark?
Thank you, Zach. I know that we as NAIFA haven't been able to get together like we like to and network with one another, but we do have two fun happy hour events coming up. First of all, I hope everyone has marked their calendars for the NAIFA Belong event happening next Tuesday, November 17th from 7:30 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time. If you haven't heard about it, the Belong event is our way of recognizing all the amazing volunteers and award winners from this past year. Second, we're holding our NAIFA Pack Holiday Happy Hour with special musical guest, Bridget Cooper. This event will be held either December 8th or December 9th from 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern. Stay tuned for more updates on that. With that, cheers, NAIFA. Back to you, Zach.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. Now, as always, if you have any questions during the presentation, please use the Q&A feature within Zoom, and we will do our best to get to any question as time permits at the end. Now, to introduce our speaker for today, I once again turn things over to Jennifer Hodges.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being on today's NAIFA Live, hosted by NAIFA Missouri. It is my honor to introduce today's speaker, Delvin Joyce. Delvin is a financial planner with Prosperity Wealth Group and has been a loyal NAIFA member since 2010. He is currently a NAIFA trustee and also serves as a liaison to the Diversity and Inclusion Task Force. Welcome, Delvin. We're excited to have you today.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you, Jennifer. And thank you, NAIFA, NAIFA Missouri, for having me and giving me this opportunity. I am not great with technology, so I hope this works out really well. But as I'm pulling up the presentation, you know, I just first want to say thank you all for being here and thank you for being NAIFA members. So my presentation today is called Stick-to-itiveness. And I love that we get to talk about this today because NAIFA has stick-to-itiveness in spades, right? We've dealt with so much over the last several years, and now we get dealt this pandemic, and a lot of you in your own businesses are experiencing adversity. And so we're gonna have a very timely discussion about my favorite word in the English language. And again, that word is stick-to-itiveness. And for me, stick-to-itiveness simply means turning no into yes. And there's a couple of things I want to share with you before I start the conversation. And the first is, I'm not going to say anything today that's the gospel, all right? So please take everything that I say with a grain of salt. There's nothing that I say today that's going to be the gospel. These are just things that I have learned throughout my career that have helped me to be successful. The other thing that I would say is that I say everything today humbly. And I want you to know that I am speaking to myself as much as I'm speaking to you, because I 3 years ago made one of the scariest decisions of my entire life when I decided to leave my dream job as a managing director with Prudential and go back into personal production and go back into practice, right? And so for anyone out there who's just starting or made that sort of transition, you know how scary this is, right? And so please know that as I'm having this conversation today, I'm talking to me as much as I'm talking to you to motivate myself. Now, before we get into the presentation, there is something that I do need some help with, all right? So first thing I want to say is, you know, obviously a lot of you know my background. I played professional football for the New York Giants, right? And I know we got a bunch of Giants fans on here. Please type in the chat if you're a Giants fan. By the way, I do think we can come back and win the NFC East this year with like a, 6-9 record or something. But I played pro football at the New York Giants. Now, before you get too excited, You have to know that I was not a star on the team by any means, but fortunately for me, I happened to look like one of the stars on the team at the time, right? And for you sports fans out there, you guys know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about a guy named Tiki Barber, right? So the great thing for me is that I could sit on the bench for like 90% of the game. Tiki was in the game, you know, scoring touchdowns and jumping over people and catching passes and doing all these amazing things. And then after the game, he'd sneak out of the back of the stadium, and then I would walk out in the front of the stadium. And all the fans would run up to me thinking I was Tiki. So I got to live the life of an NFL celebrity. I signed autographs. I got free drinks in New York City. It was fantastic. And the funny thing about that is Tiki already has a twin, right? Rondé Barber, who also played pro football. So I guess technically that makes us triplets, right? So here's my ask. Here's what I need help with. One of my goals in life is to be so successful in my life after football that people start walking up to Tiki and telling him he looks like me. So if you ever run into this guy out in public, I need you to walk up to him and say, hey, you look like Delvin Joyce. Is that a deal? Can you guys do that for me? All right. Thank you, NAIFA. All right. So let's talk about our agenda today. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the word no, a word that has an undeniable effect on all of us. Then we're going to talk about my story and my personal experience with the word no. And then I'm going to take you through 6 lessons that I learned throughout my athletic career that I use to turn no into yeses. And then finally, hopefully we'll have some time for questions. And if we don't have time for questions, don't worry. I have included some books in this presentation that if you wanted to continue the dialogue, or if you wanted to continue your development in a certain area, I give some book recommendations that I think you should pick up to expand the conversation. So let's get started. Let's talk about the word no, a word that has an undeniable effect on all of us. And it's my opinion that no one who's ever accomplished anything phenomenal in life has been comfortable with that word. Now, our experience with the word no starts at a very young age, right? For many of us, it's like one of the first words we learn as kids, because it's the word our parents said to us most often to try to protect us. It's estimated that the average 2-year-old hears the word no about 400 times a day. All right, 400 times. And I know it sounds like a lot, but think about it. When you say no to a toddler, right? When you say no to a 2-year-old, you don't just say no and they listen. You have to say it like, no, no, no. That's 3 times right there. And so what happens is we hear this word no, we grow up, and eventually we learn another word, another powerful word, right? And that word is what? It's why, right? We learn how to push back. We learn this word why. And what do our parents say when we say why? They say, because I said so. My mom was the queen of because I said so. In fact, I had kids myself just so I had somebody to say, because I said so too. But what happens when we say, because I said so, what we learn, what our kids learn is that no is absolute. That no is insurmountable. That no is final. And so we grow up and, we try out for our little league sports teams. And when we don't make the team, we stop playing. Or we try out for the high school musical. And when we don't get the part, we stop singing and we stop dancing. Here's my favorite one. We have that client, right? That person that's been on our chicken list. We've been too afraid to call them. We finally build up the courage to call them. And guess what? They don't do business with us. So we delete their number and never call them again. So I believe that I'm going to have my most amazing year yet in this career next year. And I'm not going to have a great year next year because a bunch of people will tell me yes. I'm going to have a phenomenal year next year because so many people this year told me no. Because I believe that every no plants a seed for a future yes. When I was managing director for Prudential in South Florida, I often had people walk into my office 6 months after taking the job or coming into the career, and they would quit. They would shut it down. And here's the number one reason. You guys can put it in the chat. What's the number one reason that people walked into my office and quit, gave up on their dreams, gave up on this career? The number one reason was that they ran out of people to talk to. I ran out of people to see. I don't have anybody else to call. Now, let's do the math. There's 6 million people in metropolitan South Florida. By the way, all of them voted last week, which is a great thing. But there's 6 million people in Metro South Florida. They didn't run out of people to talk to. They ran out of people they thought would tell them yes. So, I think no has a lot of power, and we have to take that power away from it. One of the best books that I ever read was a book called Never Split the Difference. Now, it's written by a former FBI hostage negotiator named Chris Voss. And by the way, I'm not suggesting that you approach your practice like a hostage negotiation, unless you're replacing whole life insurance. All right. That was an insurance joke. Go NAIFA. But this former FBI hostage negotiator wrote this book called Never Split the Difference. And he devoted an entire chapter to the word no. And in this chapter, he talked about how he liked to begin the negotiation with no. He didn't believe the negotiation started between him and the other party until he got them to tell him no. So he sought it out. He wanted the no, right? Because he believed that yes didn't always mean yes. He knew that there were 3 types of yeses, and he talks about this in the book. He says that first, there's the confirmation yes. That's where you can say something that can be easily confirmed, or you can Google it and they agree with you and they say yes, right? Confirmation. Then he said there's something called the counterfeit yes. That's where somebody just says yes to you just to get rid of you, right? They're not really bought in. How many of us have heard that story about, well, I was sitting down with those people at their kitchen table and I wasn't leaving until I took a life app, right? Now, what typically happens in that situation? They go into witness protection the very next day and we never hear from them again, right? And that's because you got a counterfeit yes. But the yes that we want, the yes that we all are looking for is the commitment yes. That's when people are truly bought in to you and what you're selling. And he says that if you get anything other than a commitment yes, then it's actually a no. So try to get that first. So I've incorporated this idea into my practice. And for me, a lot of my friends are my clients and a lot of clients are my friends. So here is something that I say to my friends who I am trying to get as clients. I invite them to tell me no. I give them permission to tell me no right off the bat, right? Hey, Zach, listen, man, we're friends. And if you decide we shouldn't work together in this way, I want you to feel comfortable enough to tell me that. I can assure you it won't affect our friendship, right? Zach breathes a sigh of relief. Now, I wish I had known this script when I first started in the industry 14 years ago, because I almost ended up back in the NFL, right? No friends left because I was all over them. But this is an easy way to introduce what you do and just let them off the hook. Give them permission to tell you no. Now, once you get that no, what are you going to do? Are you going to give up or are you going to show stick-to-itiveness? Now, here's my favorite part of this presentation, right? I want you to think of yourself like the gas station pump. Now, who's pumped gas recently, right? Raise your hand. I can't see you, but raise your hand anyway. So if you've pumped gas recently, then this machine will ask you several questions, but there's one specific question, and I'd love for you to put it in the chat. What is one thing that this gas station pump will ask you, right? So the one thing that it's going to ask you is, would you like a car wash? Who's ever gotten the gas station car wash? I had never gotten a gas station car wash ever. I've gotten gas a gazillion times, and every time I pull up, it asks me, would you like a gas station car wash? I say no. And despite the fact that I've said no to this machine 600 million times, it still keeps asking me. And it doesn't care that I told it no. It's still going to ask the car that comes up behind me if they want a car wash, right? And I want you to have that mentality. It's called stick-to-itiveness. Now, here's the thing. I also believe that pain determines pace, all right? Pain determines pace. The pain that someone is experiencing or that they feel will determine the pace with which they work with you, all right? And I'm going to give you an example. So, I had said no to this gas station pump about a gazillion times. But last year in December, we had a snowstorm in Charlotte, North Carolina, where I live. I was going to see one of my best clients, and from his office window, he could see into the parking lot, and I knew that he could see me getting out of my car. And so on the way to see this guy, my number one client, I stopped to get gas. And this gas station pump happens to ask me, guess what? What it asked me, would you like a car wash? And when it asked me, I looked at my car, and at that moment, my car was as dirty as I had ever seen it. And I said, I can't let my client see me get out of this dirty car. And so for the first time, after saying no to this machine a gazillion times, I said yes. And that day I got a gas station car wash. Pain will determine the pace. You may be meeting with clients and you have given the best life insurance presentation ever, or you've put together the most incredible investment portfolio. You know it makes sense for them, but they don't do it, right? But pain determines pace. You have to stay with them and show that stick-to-itiveness. No means not now, right? So just remember that. Now, the best part about this slide is that, and this is why it's my favorite, now every time you go get gas and it asks you if you want a car wash, you're going to think about me. All right. So that's fantastic. All right. So let's talk about my story and my personal experience with the word no. So this is my family. This is my favorite family picture. That's my mom over to the left. That's me in the ugly Christmas sweater, the cute little adorable guy right there. That's my sister. She's in the 4th grade. And then to the right of her is my dad. My dad was 4 feet, 10 inches tall as an adult. You can see he and my sister are the exact same height, and she's in 4th grade. And my dad taught me something very important at a very young age. He taught me stick-to-itiveness. He said to me, he said, son, don't ever let anyone tell you that you're too small to do anything. Because when he was my age, he had let people talk him out of pursuing his dreams of, sports stardom. And he was determined not to let that happen to me. So I grew up with this chip on my shoulder because my dad said, Delvin, don't ever let anyone tell you that you're too small. And so all through Little League sports, I endured all the short jokes. And then I got to high school, and my number one goal for high school was to get a college scholarship, because I knew that my parents probably couldn't afford to pay for the college, that I wanted to go to. So I had to get a scholarship. And I'll save you the details, but after a great high school football career, right? I was all region, all district, all state, broke a bunch of records. 0 colleges offered me an opportunity to continue my career. I got 0 scholarship offers. Out of all the colleges in the entire country, no one wanted me to come play football for them. They didn't even offer me an opportunity to be what's called a recruited walk-on, where they say, hey, Delvin, we like you. We think you could play, but we just don't have any more scholarships. Walk on and we'll give you an opportunity. No schools even offered me that opportunity. And when they came into my high school and they talked to my high school coaches, guess what the feedback was? Yeah, he's a good player, but we don't think he's big enough to be a college football player. But guess what my dad told me? He said, son, don't ever let anybody tell you that. So fortunately for me, I was a good student, and I applied to the college that I wanted to go to, which was James Madison University in Virginia. Go Dukes, if there's any Dukes on this line. But so I go to James Madison University, and I decide to walk on. Now, remember I said colleges will give you an opportunity to walk on. They'll recruit you to walk on. I was the opposite. I was an unrecruited, uninvited walk-on. They didn't even know who I was. They didn't even know I existed. But on my first day of school, I walked down to the coach's office, knocked on the door, introduced myself, and said, "Hey, I'm Delvin Joyce. I want to play football." Now, fortunately, they gave me an opportunity. And I'll spare you the details of the college career, but I'll give you the highlights, right? I earned a scholarship after one semester my freshman year. They gave me a scholarship without even stepping on the field. I was All-American. I broke eight school records, 2 NCAA records, and back in 2015, I was inducted into the school's Hall of Fame. Now, you would think that with that kind of career, right? What am I thinking? What's on my mind? You guys know, right? Oh, I may have a shot at the big show, right? I may have a shot to play in the NFL. But after that career, guess how many NFL teams drafted me on draft day? Yeah, you got it, 0, right? And the NFL also has a thing kind of like a walk-on, but they sign you as like what's called an undrafted free agent, where they give you an opportunity to sign and actually make the team. Guess how many teams gave me that opportunity? Yeah, you guessed it, 0. And guess what the feedback was from these teams when they came to my college, and the feedback they gave my coaches? The feedback was, well, he's a good player. He had a good college career, but we're not sure he could be an NFL player, right? We're not sure he's big enough to be an NFL player. And so, unfortunately, there is no such thing as walking on in the NFL, right? I can't just show up and say I want to play football. So I actually ended up going to work at John Hancock, right? So right out of college, it's really hot in my office, by the way, because I get worked up on this presentation. But right out of college, I go straight to work at John Hancock, selling long-term care insurance. It's probably the greatest blessing that I've ever gotten, because I learned about this industry and the good work that we do right out of college at a young age, right? But, I had given up on my NFL career. I had accepted the word no. But then a funny thing happened. I somehow found my way with the help of my father-in-law we went to a Baltimore Ravens scrimmage. We went to a Baltimore Ravens practice. And I didn't want to go. He dragged me there. He was like, "Hey, the Ravens got an open practice. You should come and watch, blah, blah, blah." And I was like, "I don't want to go. I've seen a million practices." Fortunately, I went. And crazy thing is, while I was there, I'm seeing guys on the field that I didn't think were any better than me. So I'm like, wow, that guy is an NFL player. I think I could still play football. And so my father-in-law says, "Oh yeah, well, let's make it happen." Right. And so, we went back to his house that day. We put together a highlight tape of all my awards and accolades, right? All my highlights from college. And we sent it out to every NFL team. This is a true story, right? We sent it out to every NFL team by FedEx the next day. And it's crazy. I was sitting at my cubicle at Hancock making cold calls, and the Giants GM called me out of the blue and said that they wanted to give me an opportunity to come in as an undrafted free agent. This after sitting out of football for an entire year. Now, the common misconception, right, is that, you sign an NFL contract, you're automatically on the team. Congrats, you're a millionaire. That's not true at all. So those of you out there who know how it all works, there's 90 something guys that get invited to NFL training camps, but only 53 of them make the active roster. And so you get invited, but there's no guarantee you're going to make the team. Now, so I get there and I hear all these short jokes. And by the way, the New York media, which you guys know, the New York media is known for being nice to people, right? I mean, that's kind of how they operate. So the New York media, they're writing all these write-ups about the upcoming season. And it was all about, Michael Strahan and Jason Sehorn and Tiki Barber and all these great things. And then in every article, I was like a little tiny footnote at the bottom. And they would say, "Oh yeah, and there's this kid named Delvin Joyce out of James Madison. He's been out of football for a year working as a financial advisor. He's going to be a tackling dummy," right? Basically, they just invited me to training camp because, they needed extra bodies to tackle. And so I'm so proud of the following year. I was on the cover of the sports section of every major New York newspaper in the New York metropolitan area. And I say all that to say, none of this would have happened without stick-to-itiveness. The first no I got right out of high school, every college in the entire country told me no, but I had stick-to-itiveness. And out of college, every NFL team told me no. And through the help of other people and mentors, I had stick-to-itiveness. And so there are some very valuable lessons that I learned along the way that I like to share with you now. So the first lesson is know, like, and trust. People do business with people that they know, that they like, and that they trust. Now, I get to do this presentation for all kinds of groups and organizations, and my favorite is college kids. So I do this presentation for college kids, and what's great about it is, when I say this, it's the first time they've ever heard it, and they think I'm like a genius. They're like, wow, know, like, and trust. That makes so much sense. But where I learned this lesson was my rookie year with the Giants. There was another guy who was in training camp with us, and he was a really good player. He was bigger than me. He was faster than me. And oh, by the way, he was also already a professional because he had been playing professional football in Canada. So here's the difference, though. The coaches, they knew both of us. They liked both of us, but they couldn't trust that he would be in the right place at the right time if they called a certain play, right? I knew the playbook inside and out. And unfortunately, my friend, his name was Antonio. Antonio struggled learning the playbook. And so the coaches didn't trust that they could put him in the game and he would do the right thing. It's the only reason I made the team, all right? Now, I like to use this Chick-fil-A analogy because what do we love about Chick-fil-A, right? I mean, I know we all love that chicken sandwich with the little pickle that's perfectly placed. I don't know who thought of putting that pickle on that sandwich, but it's amazing, right? We love that, but we also love their service. We love the way they make us feel. And I use this analogy because my wife, who is the smartest person I know, right? She's a veterinarian. She also went to James Madison, but she graduated magna cum laude, and I graduated, thank the Lord, right? But so my wife, this really smart woman, will not allow our kids to eat at McDonald's, right? And why won't she let our kids eat at McDonald's? Because it's bad for you. Now, she'll take them to Chick-fil-A because it's good for you, right? She believes it's better for you. And why does she believe that? Because I don't know if anyone, and by the way, this is no shade to McDonald's or Chick-fil-A, but I don't know if anyone has looked at the nutritional value of that beautiful chicken sandwich, but it is just as bad nutritionally as anything on McDonald's menu. But because of the way they treat you, because of the way they treat my wife every time she shows up there and they say, my pleasure, and how can I help you? And they have a smile on their face. She knows them, she likes them, and she also trusts that the food is actually better for her, right? So I want you to think about in your practice, are you spending time making sure that you're known, right? And when I say known, it's not just do people know you, it's do people actually know what you do and how you do it for your clients, right? How many times have we been sitting with a friend and they say, well, I had the hardest time rolling my 401k over. And you say, what? Why didn't you talk to me about that? I could have helped you with that. And they say, well, I thought you only did insurance, or I thought you did X, Y, or Z. So no, it's not just are you known, but it's do people actually know what you do? What about liked? How do you spend time being likable? How do you increase your likability? So two things. Number one, smile. People that are likable tend to have a smile on their face. The other thing is that, when you meet someone, don't just talk about you and yourself, talk about them. Show a genuine interest in other people. So showing that genuine interest will make you the most likable person ever. I've gone to, networking events where I meet someone for the first time And I just ask them questions about themselves and give them an opportunity to talk the entire time. And guess what? Even though I haven't really said anything, they walk away from that conversation and say, man, that Delvin guy, he's pretty cool. I like him, right? So spend time being likable. And then lastly, trust. And trust is a big one. And fortunately, I don't think there are any, hard, incredible things that you have to do to build trust. I just think that there are some really basic things that you can do to build trust in your practice. The first is be on time, right? Be on time. There's never an excuse to be late for anything. I played for a coach, Tom Coughlin. So the Giants fans and maybe even some Jags fans out there, or even Boston College fans, know about Tom Coughlin. He was a military guy, right? And his motto was, if you're on time, you're early. And if you're early, you're on time. And if you're on time, you're late. And if you're late, don't even bother showing up, right? He fined Michael Strahan $5,000 for being on time for a meeting. So be on time, right? The other one is do what you said you would do. And unfortunately, right now, I think in our society, so few people actually follow through on what they said they would do, that sadly, just doing that will set you apart from many people. So do what you said you would do. If you tell your client you're going to call them Thursday at 2 p.m., you better pick up the phone and call them Thursday at 2 p.m. because they understand that if you let them down with the small things, they could never trust you with the big things, right? So do what you said you would do and be on time. How about community service? Community service is a big one. And I know it's a cliche, but people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so do community service, but not for the sake of getting clients, right? Don't be the community service creep who joins some organization or does community service just for prospecting. Do something that you're passionate about, that you care about, because that's what's going to motivate you to get up at 6 a.m. on a Saturday morning when you could have slept in to go help some kids or whatever the community service is. Now, what's going to happen though is as a part of that, you're going to meet people, and those people are going to see that you're so bought in and passionate about helping people that they're going to see you as someone who can be trusted, and you're going to get clients and you're going to get referrals. But you cannot go into it with that in mind. Be pure in your intentions. And then lastly, social media. And we could do an entire presentation on social media, but I will tell you that I was slow to the party. I was slow to the social media party because for me, it just seemed like a bunch of self-promotion all the time. I see people taking selfies and, I've got a face for radio, and that wasn't really going to be my ball game. But there was one small thing that sort of turned me around on the social media thing. And it was this magazine cover from Forbes that announced the fact that Kylie Jenner is a billionaire. Now, how did Kylie Jenner become a billionaire? Because prior to her becoming a billionaire, I didn't really know what she was really known for, right? And Kylie Jenner is a billionaire because of social media. She built this social media platform where all these brands wanted to utilize her trust and credibility that she had with her audience and followers and capitalize on it, right? And so she has built this social media empire that has allowed her to become a billionaire. Now, I'm not going to say that you should go out and try to become some social media influencer. That is not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that, are you utilizing social media effectively to build trust with your audience? Are you utilizing social media to let people know who you are and actually know exactly what you do for your clients, right? Because building that platform will allow you to build trust and credibility. It's amazing. My platform personally is LinkedIn. I use LinkedIn very effectively, I think, where I post articles about, certain topics in financial planning, but I also post articles or pictures of me doing things in the community. It all works to help me build trust and credibility. I actually just got on LinkedIn, on Instagram recently. Now, my company doesn't allow us to post anything on Instagram from a business standpoint. But if you want to see pictures of my family, I'm on Instagram. Don't follow your dreams. Follow my Instagram at DelvinJ33. I need followers. All right. So figure that out. All right. So here's the challenge. Many of us, we've gotten to, get someone to know us. They like us. They trust us. But how do we make the transition, right? That's the hard part. How do we transition from, a personal relationship or maybe, an acquaintance relationship to actually getting a business opportunity? And this is language that I stole from Richard Wildman. I didn't steal it, actually. He gave it to me my first year in the industry in 2006. Richard Wildman, who's a marketing genius, came up with this transition language. And it says, basically, hey, I've really enjoyed getting to know you personally. I'd like the opportunity to introduce myself to you professionally and show you how I work with my clients, right? I've also seen it as an apology. And I use it as an apology as well. So, hey, Jennifer, I apologize. We've known each other for so long, and I don't think I've ever actually introduced myself to you professionally, right? I love the opportunity to do that and show you the work that I do for my clients, right? It's a really easy transition. And what you have to do is practice that script, internalize it, and say it however makes you comfortable. But the main thing is you want to, hey, it's great getting to know you personally, or it's been great getting to know you on this board. I'd like an opportunity to introduce myself to you professionally. It's really easy. Now, the other one that people struggle with, and I also struggle with this, is how do I transition to business with those close relationships, right? So those people that have these close relationships with me, right? So for me, I heard this at a NAIFA meeting, right? I was struggling with this. I go to a NAIFA meeting in NAIFA, Miami. We had an American funds wholesaler there that day, and he gave us all this script. And what it says is, hey, listen, our relationship means more to me than any sort of business we could ever do together. But hey, I wanted to let you know if you ever needed help, my door is always open, right? That's just, not you trying to sell your friends or family anything. It's you offering to be a resource. It's letting them know that you're open for new clients, right? If you ever need help, my door is always open. But my relationship means more to me than any sort of business we could ever do together. Internalize it, memorize it, and make it your own and say it however you need to say it, but keep the general idea there. All right. A great book that I read, it's called The Go-Giver. I'm sure there are plenty of people that also have read this book, but it's a great book about how to be known, liked, and trusted in your community by being a giver, right? And so it's a phenomenal read that I think gives tips and ideas on how to effectively do that. So I was so enamored with this idea of being a giver that I started to incorporate that into my practice, into my ideology, and even my social media strategy. So how many of us, we get a LinkedIn invitation, right? Someone invites us to connect, and we connect with them and we never engage them. Or worse, we connect with them and then we proceed to throw up all over them and say, hey, by the way, I'm a financial advisor. Roll your 401k over to me, or let me sell you some insurance, right? How many of us are guilty of that? How many of us are guilty of the, hey, let's have coffee and see if there's any synergy, right? And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but rather than go that route, offer to be a giver. So here's what I do. If you connect with me on LinkedIn, first off, it's going to be a while. I got about 200 invitations waiting, but you offer to be a giver. So I would say, hey, thanks for connecting. Let me know if I can ever introduce you to anyone in my network, right? I'm offering to give because that's what LinkedIn is about. It's about linking people together. So I'm offering to do that. And guess what they say? The law of reciprocity. They say, well, why? Thanks, Delvin. You do the same. And guess what I do? I'll look into their connections to see if I'd like an introduction to someone, right? So be a giver because givers get. All right, lesson 2, and we are rolling. So lesson 2 is adversity doesn't build character, it reveals it. Now, I learned this lesson so many times, but I think the first time I really conceptualized it was my freshman year in college, actually. I had a terrible week of practice. I had an even worse game. I fumbled I've made all kinds of mistakes, and I was down in the dumps. I had some adversity, and I don't even remember who gave it to me, but they actually gave me this picture, right? This picture you see on your screen now. It's the last time I ever actually colored something. I took this back to my dorm room. I pulled out some colored pencils and I colored it, and I stuck it on my wall behind my bed to remind me that life is only 10% what happens to you and 90% how you respond to it. And that week, I had the best week of practice ever. And I went out and I had one of the best games in my college career. Now, guys, we're all going to experience adversity. This business is nothing if not full of adversity. And the challenge is, when we see someone successful, we have the tendency to, assume that they've always been successful, right? We see Mark Aker and we see this successful guy. We see Jennifer Hodges. We see this successful person. And our assumption is that they've always been successful, that they've never had any adversity. And the reality is they have, right? And so the question is not, are you going to have adversity, but how are you going to handle it? And I think there are several ways that you can handle adversity, that you can get over it. And these are, just some ways that I've gotten over adversity myself. The first is work harder. I am a strong believer that hard work can get you out of any hole that you're in, right? And I know there are some people out there that are going to say you should work smarter, and I tend to agree, but I don't think there is any substitute for hard work, because I believe that the work smarter crowd, that's a bunch of people that use hard work to get into a position to be able to write books and do speeches on working smart, right? And so now they tell you not to work hard, but work smart. I believe in hard work. Anytime I've ever had any adversity, I've gone back to the drawing board and worked hard and gotten myself out of it. But here's the other thing: focus on green activity, right? The activity that's going to bring you the most revenue. So if you want to define working smart as making sure that you are working hard in the right areas, then I absolutely agree with that. You also want to make sure you review your model work week to make sure you have enough time scheduled for that green activity. And then lastly, you want to spend time with positive, successful people. But that's not human nature, right? Human nature is when I'm having a bad time, or when I'm experiencing adversity, or when I'm down in the dumps, I want to find someone else that is really negative, that also hates underwriting at our company, so I can go commiserate in that misery, right? Everybody loves a pity party. What I'm going to tell you is that, you should, when you're experiencing adversity, find the most positive, successful person you know, because that person, not only are they going to motivate you, but they're also going to maybe challenge you, right? So if you're having a beef with underwriting, rather than go to John, who, that's not you, John Richardson, that's another John. But rather than go to John, and because John doesn't like underwriting either, and have a pity party, go over to Mark, because Mark is the most positive, successful person in your firm. And Mark might ask you some different questions, right? Like, hey, tell me about your field underwriting. Mark's going to help you to get better. Go to a NAIFA meeting, right? I'll give you an example. I was, really down in the dumps one time because I had a hard time selling disability insurance. And, lo and behold, I went to a NAIFA meeting where I sat down with an MDRT top of the table producer in Miami, and he told me how he sells disability insurance. And he used one simple word. He said, Delvin, here's what I tell my clients. Your death, that's everybody else's problem. But your disability, that's your problem. Why don't we take care of that? And right then and there, the light bulb went off, and I went out and sold more disability insurance that year than I ever had. And that's how I overcame the adversity. Spend time with positive, successful people. A great book that I read, it's called Grit by Angela Duckworth. She is a phenomenal writer, but she wrote this book about grit, not as something that cannot be grown, but she wrote it as if it's a personality trait. Because she says that, the most successful people are not always the most talented or the best looking or the best dressed or the smartest. They are the grittiest, right? And she said that if grit is a personality trait, then it can be developed, it can be honed, it can be grown. And so I think it should have been called stick-to-itiveness. Maybe she's waiting on me to write that book. But in the book, she talks about ways that you can actually grow your grit. So I would recommend it for anyone. For the non-readers out there, she also has a TED Talk that can be easily looked up on YouTube. And it's a shorter version, but fantastic read. All right, here's one of my favorites. Amateurs practice until they get it right. Professionals practice until they can't get it wrong. I'm going to say it again. Amateurs practice until they get it right. Professionals practice until they can't get it wrong. Where I learned this lesson was in my transition from college football to NFL football and the way we practiced. In college, we'd be on the field for 3 hours and we'd run 300 and something plays, that we would put into the game plan for our opponent next week, right? In the NFL, it was a very efficient practice, hour and 15 minutes, and we didn't have 300 plays that we were trying to get down. There was, maybe 10 plays that we were practicing, not until we got it right, but until we couldn't get it wrong. There was definitely a mindset shift there. And the analogy that I like to use here is, this guy, if you can see the picture on your screen, it's a guy named Alex Honig, right? And Alex had the crazy idea to climb a mountain or climb this rock. It's called El Capitan. It's about 3,000 feet high, right? So over a half a mile high. And he decided that he wanted to climb it without ropes. And so they made a documentary about it. It's called Free Solo. If you have not seen it, I highly recommend it because it was transformative for me. In fact, this is a new slide in this presentation because I was so taken by his feat. And he says something in the movie so profound that it stuck with me. Because you and I, we look at this and we say, that guy Alex, he's crazy. What is he thinking? That's dumb. Because if he falls, he's dead, right? Well, here's what Alex said in the movie. He said, people confuse risk and consequences. He said, people confuse consequences with risk. And so he says, we look at him climbing this rock without any ropes, and all we look at are the consequences of him falling. And we confuse that with the risk of him falling. Because he said, I've practiced so much, the risk of me actually falling is really, really low, right? Because if you watch the documentary, he practices like crazy, but with ropes. And he practices so much that he knows every nook and cranny of El Capitan, so that when it comes time for him to do it without ropes, the consequences are high, but the risk is really low, right? Because he knew that he had to practice until he couldn't get it wrong because his life depended on it. Now, fortunately for us, our lives don't depend on our next presentation, right, with a client. But I want you to take that mentality. Are you practicing your scripts, right? When you pick up the phone to talk to a client and you're using maybe some of the scripts that I just gave you in this presentation, have you practiced them until you can't get it wrong, right? When you're sitting down with a client for a new presentation to open up a financial plan or to open up a new insurance case, have you practiced everything that you want to say until you can't get it wrong, right? So many of us, I think, freestyle it. Professionals practice until they can't get it wrong. I want you to be a professional. And so the hard part for many of us is that we're extroverted, big idea people, but we are not great at executing, right? We don't practice enough to where we can execute. And there's a great book that I read. It was a game changer for me called The 4 Disciplines of Execution. And it really just talks about things that you can do to be a professional so that you make sure that every opportunity you get, you actually execute. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time going through these 4 disciplines because I'm going to run out of time. But first off, determine your wildly important goals. Don't have 10 goals, right? Because you probably won't accomplish anything. Maybe set 2 or 3 goals. You'll probably hit all 3. Focus on the lead measures. Don't say I want to do 300,000 of production next year. Say I want to make 10 calls a week because that will get me the 300,000 in production. That's a lead measure. Don't focus on the lag measures. Keep score, right? Know your numbers, and also create a cadence of accountability. Not just accountability for yourself, but create accountability with other people, right? Tell people your goals so that they can also hold you accountable. And so there are a couple of things that I think you can do in addition to that to be a professional in our industry. The first is specialization, whether it's a specific market or a specific practice area. In our practice, we work with people who are first generation wealth. We call them Henrys. And we also work with veterinarians, right? So specialization. There's also expertise, your ability to explain things simply, right? And that takes practice, right? Practicing your language, but also it also takes an acute awareness and understanding of what you're talking about. And what I've learned is that the best way to be able to explain things simply is to actually know it cold. Because when you know it, you know, you don't get bogged down in jargon trying to explain it. You have an ability to explain it much simpler. Professional designations, right? It's a great way to be a professional. And then finally, NAIFA membership, because we have a code of conduct for our members that we have to abide by. And so when I'm sitting down with a client and I can say that I am a member of my professional organization, association for our financial services industry that has a code of conduct that says I have to do what's in your best interest, I think it really goes a long way into making you a professional. All right, lesson 4, there's always someone looking to take your spot. And I don't mean that to say that, you know, people are vindictive or that you should be looking over your shoulder or watching your back. I'm only saying that to say that's the mentality that we should all have as we approach our respective careers, right? As you approach your practice with your clients, but also maybe how you approach your friendships, your relationships, your marriage. Because I believe that if we always have this mentality, then we're always going to be forced to perform at our best. Now, where I learned this lesson was my rookie year with the Giants. And I worked my way up to be the starting punt and kick returner. And I got, you know, in practice one day, I tweaked my ankle and I just kind of sort of sashayed over to the training table. And I put my leg up on the table and the trainers are working on me and I'm drinking Gatorade. And my backup goes up into practice and he does something phenomenal. And everybody goes wild. And then he does it again. And now all of a sudden, everybody's looking at me sitting on the training table and they start saying this name. It's a name I had never heard before, but they start saying Wally Pipp, Wally Pipp. Has anybody ever heard that name before? Anybody know who Wally Pipp is? Right? So here's Wally Pipp. Wally Pipp played first base for the New York Yankees. That is, of course, until one game he had a toothache or a headache or something, and you know he didn't play that game. And who took his spot? Right? Who filled in for him? A guy named Lou Gehrig, the guy on the right. And then Lou Gehrig goes in to play first base for the Yankees and then plays a gazillion games in a row, breaks the Major League Baseball record for the most consecutive games played, and Wally Pipp never got another opportunity. I mean, he doesn't even have the NY on his jersey in this picture, right? So they were saying Wally Pipp because I had forgotten that there was someone looking to take my spot. I had gotten comfortable. So I want you to think about your practice, right? Are you a high touch, high contact practice with your clients? We work so hard to go out and get clients. And then once we get them, right, while we're trying to get them, we're taking them out to nice dinners. We're taking them out for golf. We're courting them. And then after we get them as clients, you know, we forget all about them. Maybe we send them a birthday card every now and then. but you have to always remember that someone's looking to take your spot. We are high touch, high contact at Prosperity Wealth Group, my firm. And, we are always in contact. We send out a quarterly newsletter to our clients. We call them for their birthdays. We don't even send cards. We actually physically pick up the phone and call them. I made 7 calls today. And best part is I can leave a message if they don't answer, but they know that I'm thinking about it. The other thing is that we always check in with them when there's market volatility. So back in March during coronavirus, we sent out an email and we made phone calls. Hey, you've probably seen this was not a great week in the market. Just want to let you know, blah, 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 right? We let them know we're thinking about it. But here's the other thing. The other side of that is not everybody gave me their money last year. So there are clients that I had to reach out to who have their money with someone else. These are prospects. And we also called them in March and we said, just checking in. I don't know if you've talked to your advisor, but here are 3 questions you should be asking right now. And we picked up more money in our practice between April and May just for this exact reason. There are advisors out there that forgot that there was someone looking to take their spot. Do not get complacent. Don't become comfortable. You can't turn no into yes if you get comfortable, right? So a comfort zone is a beautiful place, but nothing ever grows there. Don't get comfortable. All right, lesson 5, look good, play good. I hope everybody knows who that is. If you know who that is, put it in the chat, but that is Neon Deion Sanders. And Neon Deion had a saying. He would say, if I look good, I feel good. And if I feel good, I play good. And if I play good, they pay good. Now, I don't think that's proper English, but I'm going to go with it. And where I first heard this, I'd never heard that before. Where I first heard this was from my good friend, Jason Sehorn with the Giants. And Jason, if you know Jason, he was from Southern California. He's a pretty boy. And before every practice, Jason was in the mirror, making sure his uniform was perfect. Everything's tucked in. He's doing his hair. And I'm like, dude, why are you doing your hair? You're about to put a helmet on, right? And he looks at me and he says, Joyce, if I look good, I feel good. If I feel good, I'm going to practice good. And if I practice good on Sunday, I'll play good. And if I play good, they pay good. And so I've incorporated that idea into my practice, into everything that I do. I'm always going to look the part. I'm always going to dress in a way that makes me feel like my most confident self, right? And for me, that's going to be a jacket with a tie and a pocket square and whatever it is. For you, it might be something totally different. But I'm not saying that you need to wear a suit and tie everywhere, but you need to make sure that when you are going to see a client, that you are presenting your best original self. Because I believe that in 1/10 of a second, less than 1/10 of a second, they're going to make a judgment about your ability to do your job, and it's going to have nothing to do with your actual competence. It's going to have everything to do with how you look. So why not make it the best appearance possible? There's a great book I read. It's called First Impressions, What You Don't Know About How Others See You. It's a really good book about how to make that first impression the best impression. All right, last lesson. I think I only have 2 minutes. Lesson 6, burn the ships. Burn the ships. I had never heard this before, but where I learned this lesson was with the Giants. And, I was told this story because my twin brother, Tiki Barber, had given a pregame speech before the Giants played the Vikings in the 1999 NFC Championship game for a chance to go to the Super Bowl. And the speech was so legendary that people were still talking about it 2 years later when I showed up. But as the story goes, Tiki, in the pregame speech in the locker room, explains to the team how when Vikings would invade an island or they would take over another fleet of ships, the first thing they would do was burn their own ships. And why would they do that? They did it to send a signal that failure was not an option, that it was no retreat, no surrender. And he said to the team that day, if they were going to be successful against the Minnesota Vikings, they had to burn the ships. And he pulls out a paper Viking ship in the locker room, sets it on fire, and the team goes wild and they go out and beat the Minnesota Vikings 50-something to nothing. Yes, Corey Anderson, they did, right? And so, you know, I believe that for us to be successful in this industry, we have to burn the ships. Many of us that come into this industry, we're career changers, right? And we could tiptoe into the business and say, well, if it doesn't work out, I can always go back to my old career. Well, guess what? That's a ship. You got to burn it, right? We also have this self-doubt that we tell ourselves, these excuses for why we can't do something like other people or why we can't be successful. Those are also ships. You have to burn them. So thank you so much, NAIFA. Thank you, NAIFA Live, for this opportunity. NAIFA Missouri, this was a lot of fun. Hope everybody has a great rest of the year. And I look forward to seeing you all in person at some point again in the future. Thank you.
Delvin, thank you so much for your presentation today. And thank you, NAIFA Missouri, for hosting today's session. Now, this is the last NAIFA Live of the year, but we will be back next year with your monthly membership meeting. So for now, I will just say to everyone on the call, take care, be safe, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day. And I'll see you at the Belong event on Tuesday.